Good evening, Galaxy fans. As always, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Mike Gray. I am the columnist for the LA Galaxy and LAOC for the Striker. Here with me tonight to talk all things LA Galaxy is my faithful co-host, Alex Reese. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Honestly, our podcast recording time is pretty good. And I'm watching like the Miami Heat Boston Celtics game, game seven. So, right as we started, it's at halftime. So I'll have enough time to catch the end of that game.
Busy times. Speaking of busy times, Sophie is actually in a race against time. She's picking up someone at the airport, and then when she's done, she's gonna hop on the pod. So hopefully we can catch her for the last half of the podcast. So we'll see about that. But Alex, I was kind of in a bad mood Saturday, not necessarily about the team, but story time. I have some breaking news to report. Breaking Mike news, just so you know, so it's not that exciting. But I'd been getting offers for a year consistently to sell my car, and I just had to pull the trigger. It's just like Ice Blue Mini. It's for me, I like to be an optimistic, fun, friendly personality, and that car was like an extension of me a little bit. Blue is my favorite color. I actually had a El Trafico license plate, which was pretty cool.
That was
This is
amazing.
this is out of commission, so you can't you can't do anything legally about it. So that's pretty cool. Nice memento, but yeah, I was pretty bummed about it, but I guess that happens. Man, I had so many fun adventures in that thing. Speaking of Sophie, I'm almost glad that she's not on the pod yet because I'm sure she'd be interrogating me about it, and I'd be like, "Oh, well, just a lot of fun adventures." I will say that one, dude. All right, it's just a random kind of thing, but I will say that like country music shows are amazing. They're kind of a hack because, I mean, if you go to see a nice show in LA, and you don't want to, man, let's just be real. If you want to see a nice show in LA, you got to pay like hundreds of bucks, right? But country isn't that popular like in LA, so you can like get you can get like VIP seats and you can have like a really nice time and stuff. And then also like there's just this ambiance at like country music shows. You can wear a country music hat. You can dance. You can kind of be like, "Hello, ma'am. Hello, sir." Like, I
Hey,
have two.
fellas.
Hey, fellas. Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun and like I was explaining like, when you go to see a rock show, like people are excited, but it's a little different. Like country, it's just a lot of fun. But all right, that's the part I had to get out of the way. But it was a bummer, but it was also a little bit of a blessing. Was I didn't have a car, and because I didn't have a car, I couldn't travel to Carson to watch the Galaxy. Take it away, Alex. What happened Saturday night?
Yeah, it was like I said, on a striker, it's different game, same story. Let's be honest at this point. You see the same things kind of pop up. We'll talk about it in a bit right now, but yeah, it just wasn't a convincing performance once again at home. Obviously, the Galaxy have been a better team when they're at home. Obviously, you've kind of seen it in their past couple of results and games there. They fought, they've made it interesting, and they were able to do that again. But it's just not enough. And at this point, where you are at the season, how the standings are kind of shifting out and playing out, um, eh, eh, you know, every game kind of needs to feel like a must win in a way because it's gonna start slipping if you begin to slip even more. It just feels like right now this team. I wouldn't say it's divided, but just on the pitch, everyone's in their own kind of bubble from my point of view.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it a little later, just the Galaxy and where they are and what's possible for this year. Because, I mean, Alex, it's a bit of a milestone. This is our 20th podcast, which is actually really cool. That's exciting. I gotta tell you, this is the first one where like every drop of like optimism has been squeezed out of me.
Yeah,
I
I can
got
agree.
I got nothing, man. I mean, all right, Elderbar, he's a Twitter user. I told him I would ask his question live. He goes, "Bro, you think Ricky is just too fast or ahead of his surroundings? Think it throws everyone off a bit position when he's on the ball? I'm just throwing anything out there, man." Elder Bar, thank you for the question. Again, I will apologize for the surfer stoner accent, but you started with a bro, so there's nothing I can do about that. Um, there's nothing wrong with Ricky. The issue is that the team's too reliant on him. Too reliant on him playing hero ball somehow. You know, slaloming out of in and out of defenders, scoring bangers. And
Yeah.
then also, Vanny's. For me, it all goes back to a few games ago when Vanny might have let it slip, but he was frustrated. He talked about perfection, how everything needs to be precise. I've said it last episode, one before. I'll say it again. I think that's a. I think that's an indictment of both the personnel that he has around him, which, to his credit, is Chris Klein's fault, but also this team just the system itself. If you're relying on perfection, if you're relying on Javi Chicharito Hernandez to just pull magic out of his hat every game with like inch perfect crosses, then maybe when you look at LAFC, when you look at some of the elite teams around the league, the easier it is to score goals for them, the better the system is. When the system requires perfection, that tells me that the system's flawed, Alex.
Yeah, I get you, Mike. Going back to that question about Ricky, right? I don't think this is a Ricky problem, or, I think he's playing at a good pace. Again, he's going to be the guy that's going to control the pace, and I think Vanny has instilled him and instructed him to be, hey, when we need to play fast, we go through you, we play fast with you. When we need to control the game, we'll just go some quick touches, try to open up spaces through you. So I don't really see Ricky as part of the problem. In this last game against Charlotte, like he should have had an assist, right? That Tyler Boyd chance 1-on-1, where Charlotte's playing a high line and Boyd makes that perfect run to get a 1-on-1 opportunity with the keeper. Boyd, spoils that chance. Let's be honest. Should have at least tested the keeper there. Instead, tries to go around the keeper, which for many times it's the right decision to make. But when you're heading towards the near post and you're closing down that angle, it is a little questionable in my opinion. So Ricky should have had an assist in this game. Galaxy should have gone up first in this game. There was plenty of chances for the Galaxy. And again, this team I think is one of the worst when it comes to goals minus expected goals. I think the worst in the league. So that stat definitely reflects that this team just can't take their chances. They're creating things to score goals, but again, it's just the confidence in the final third just evaporates quickly. And it's everybody's not just one person. I've highlighted many times that Chicharito has not looked very sharp in the box. He hasn't looked very sharp in the build up. But in this game, you can kind of tell that's everybody now. Tyler Boyd should have played a better ball for Chicharito in the first half, and that big chance in 23rd minute that he had. Just play that on the ground. Don't make it at an awkward hip. Don't place the ball near the hip. That's always kind of a weird area to strike the ball in. And again, Boyd probably should have made a couple of better plays, but again, he's the only guy who can kind of provide that verticality, that pace, and that ability to play with both feet. Now that Douglas Costa is still injured, so again, Boyd missed his chance, Chicharito missed his chance, and we know Memo Rodriguez is going to be a very dangerous guy or getting many touches in the box, the way he plays out wide, but still, this attack needs something, and their last three games are scoreless in Major League Soccer play. So I fault the offense for just not being able to, put their chances away and help alleviate some of that pressure off the team. Because right now, when they're not scoring goals, that burden and pressure that goes on the players and the team just mounts even more on them when it stays 0-0.
I felt bad for Javi. I mean, going into this week, I thought that he might actually get a bit of a boost doing that conference, doing the mental health thing. What we got was a player who, and this has been sort of a theme, but a dude who looks like he's trying to will his way into success and willing his way into scoring goals. And then his body's just like 80, 90% there, but it's just not connecting. And then you actually had the opposite. You had total disaster. He gets that second red after, again, he does the mental health thing, and then what does he do? Gives up a careless yellow card. That's the exact opposite of like good mental health. That's just being frustrated and angry at the moment. And then he gets kicked out of the game, and no complaints from anyone. It was
Mm-hmm.
just bad tackle, studs up. You're gonna get that every day of the week, at least on VAR. And man, of all the solutions and all the problems that the Galaxy have, that one is just how do you fix that? Especially when Javi can't seem to score goals, and Dion can't seem to score goals from a starting spot. So, I mean, what do you do? This is, like we said, we're starting to run out of answers for some of these issues here. So, let's maybe get to afterwards because afterwards was very weird, Alex.
Yeah, I was. After the game, I was kind of walking down to head to the press room, and obviously, this team losing, going down to 10 men, the emotions are definitely there. But as I'm walking down, I kind of see a group of players, a contingent of players, kind of just go and be in front of ACB, and usually they do their applause, in front of the goal. But I saw they were like right behind the goal, and I'm like, okay, something's going on there, and you go to social media and you see players and members of ACB kind of having a bit of an exchange there. Didn't look too heated from the video that I think many of us have seen. But obviously they're making their thoughts known. The players are listening. I think there's like a handful of players there. Then Greg Vanny comes over. They have a bit of a chat. Will Kuntz comes over. And then he kind of tells Vanny like, "Hey, let's just go back to the locker room," to kind of lead him to go back there. So it's definitely an interesting look. It was kind of funny for me because the first thing I thought of when I saw this was what happened in Italy a couple of weeks ago, where AC Milan players and their supporters kind of had a bit of a chat on the side of the pitch there, and I was like, you know what, soccer just has a way of kind of just being so global and international. You see this in Italy, and now you see this here in Carson. So when I saw that was pretty funny. But nonetheless, it was definitely interesting because we haven't seen this kind of exchange at any point this season between the supporter groups and the club. And again, we know the supporter groups boycott. ACB just came back maybe about a month ago or two, about a month ago. But it was still interesting nonetheless to kind of see that this is happening right now. And at this point of the season, we're not even at the midway point of the season just yet. So it definitely kind of makes it feel like there's so much more pressure.
Yeah, it was a very polarizing what we saw online. You had some folks complaining, like in a negative way, that it was like AC Milan, like the ultras, like it was a bit self-indulgent. You had some people saying that the fans have the right to complain. There's been coaches in other leagues, like Brian Schmetzer, who said, you pay for a ticket, you have the right to complain, so on and so forth. I didn't think it was too bad either way. The only thing that bugged me is I didn't think it was very dignified seeing the players just sort of having to stand there while some dude is just wailing away with like a microphone like 2 feet away. Um, I mean, think about Jalen Neal, right? He's a kid who's just worked his ass off this year. He should be in Argentina winning games with his teammates, having fun with kids his age. Like, I can only imagine like the fun they're having, like off field, just bonding. I mean, that's like a life-changing experience that would give him international exposure. But no, he's stuck just at home away from all that, and he's got fans yelling at him. So I mean, for me, like that hurt a little bit, especially when you see Vanny being empathetic. He's walking over, he's trying to like understand what's going on, and so. Oh my God, I am not used to the smooth transition. The second I saw Sophie, like my heart started beating. I was like, "Oh my God, we have some other breaking news. Josh actually has Will Kuntz on later, and so the first thing I had to do is jump on Twitter and say, okay, looks like we had a heavy hitter in Sophie, so Josh had to go ahead and get his own heavy hitter. So man, that guy is good. Sophie, how are you doing?
Yeah, but is he going to be as honest as I'm going to be? That is the question.
Uh-oh.
It's a
Well,
$1 million question right there. I will go back, Mike, real quick to what you said about Neil. Everyone should really feel for Julian Alde. I mean, this is a guy who's 20 years old, could have gone back home to Argentina, playing for the U20 team, but he's stuck here, and obviously he didn't have that good of a performance. So if you feel bad for Jalen Neal, just imagine how it feels for Julian Alde. That's all I just wanted to say before we moved on.
indeed. Yeah, well, I guess that was the first part of the shenanigans, right? And then we get to the locker room, and then it's a post game presser. Vanny says some things, not a big deal. What everyone was focused on was the fact that Chris Klein was actually present in the press conference. Now, before we get started, I gotta address a question from somebody. Logan Jones, why didn't you guys ask questions about Klein when he was at the press conference? Well, first of all, I wasn't there because as I had said earlier, I'd sold my car, so I didn't get to ask anything. But I'll tell you right
Someone
off the bat.
stole your car?
No, I sold my car
okay. Oh,
actually.
okay. Sold your car. Okay.
It's equally tragic. I love that damn thing. It was a mini, a light blue, ice
I
blue
remember
mini
it. Yeah.
with
Nice
an El
car.
Trafico license plate because I'm a walking cartoon character, so that's awesome. But no, let me tell you my opinion first of all. Well, Logan, we'll get to your question. First of all, it's a reflection on the galaxy if Chris Klein chooses not to speak. This isn't the White House. We can't yell from 40 feet away like, Mr. President, Mr. President, what do you think of the recent results? That's not how it works. There's a dignified way of doing things, and we can ask questions about Klein, but as far as just badgering him to questions, no. It's just, if he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't want to talk. But it's a reflection on the club, not on us. Now, as far as Klein, I do think if you're going to go down there, you should say something because let me tell you something. Vanny, the players, they've just got a mountain of pressure right now. Okay. Now, you saw, just to use an example from the EPL, Sam Allardyce, he gets hired for Leeds, and the first thing he says is, well, me and Pep Guardiola, we're basically the same, right? Everyone starts talking about that, and all of a sudden, people aren't talking about Leeds and them getting relegated, at least for a day. I think Klein should have said something, anything, just to relieve the pressure. He's got a coach in Vanny who's stuck with these $1 million GAM, and he's got no summer transfers. And whose fault is that? It's Chris Klein's fault, right? And so, at the very least, he can do is just at least do something to take the pressure off. Sophie, what do you make of all this?
Okay, so firstly, thank you for having me on your show.
No, thank
Been a
you.
long time coming. I appreciate it very much. You guys do a great job, and I love listening to new voices and seeing, young journalists kind of doing their thing here. And you guys are doing a really good thing. You have great content for both sides of the freeways here in Los Angeles. And when I hang out with you guys at games, I learn a lot as well. I'm a sponge always. With that said, I wasn't there either, Mike, on Saturday, and I'm bummed I wasn't. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I had a family commitment, which is important, and it's. I look blue. Why do I look blue? I look like someone call 911. I actually look blue on this broadcast. Why
We're gonna
was he
blame the
there?
streaming service.
I'll
It's their
talk. I was
fault.
there.
Why was he there? And secondly, I have to say, and I think you guys know me well enough, I would have actually said something. I really would have said, hey, Chris, why are you standing on the sideline? Come up here and join the conversation. And you know why? How many times, whether you like Greg Vanny's tactics or not, whatever, how many times is Greg going to have to get up and stand up in front of the media and take all the hits? How many times are the players going to have to come out and answer all the questions and take all the hits? And yes, we're 14 games in now, and at some point you have to say, hold on a second, whatever's going on behind the scenes, no more excuses. You still have to do your job, and you still have to play football. However, I have to say, I thought it was pathetic that he came into the presser and was leaning up against the wall, and Greg was sitting there having to answer to everything over and over again and again and again. Why did you even bother coming into the room? Were you trying to show protection because of what happened 10 minutes previous with the fans? What was your point? I don't get it. Alex, I know you were there.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because again, it's not often that you really see him kind of be near the media. Most of the times when I see him around, he's on his phone or something. Whether he's on a call or not. But it was definitely something that I wasn't expecting to kind of see him there. And again, he was kind of just there on the side watching. Felt more like he was just there for support in a way. But it was again, like you mentioned, Greg's kind of answered these questions about the results, about the season, kind of what's going on, and obviously. Everything's not very good right now with the team's last place in both the West and in the overall league. But yeah, I think it's just it was so interesting for me because he was just there listening. It felt like he was just another bystander when you have the president of the club right there. And, I think I had the final question. And, right when Vanny finished answering my question, he just left back inside the locker rooms and inside the building. So,
Yeah, they
we
didn't even
really...
come to Zoom for the questions, which usually that does happen. But I don't understand why he was there on that night. And if he was there, he should have just gone up on the podium and said, "Hey guys, let's talk."
I agree. I do believe it was about protection. I believe that Klein spoke to Vanny and said, "You're good, buddy. I'm not going to fire you. That's not going
Yep.
to happen under these circumstance." And if anything, that's probably why he was so relaxed. I thought this was sort of a thing that I could have ignored a little bit. But, Sophie, you're right. He was leaning against the wall. He was relaxed. He was wearing a T-shirt and jeans. I mean, I think I dress up a little more to games, right?
Yeah.
And the whole thing just seemed kind of it was borderline disrespectful. And you know what? I can understand Klein saying, "Hey, like relax," because inside both of their minds they might be thinking they're screwed a little bit. Let's just get right down to it. I don't even want to bother with the whole "can this season be saved" narrative because they got to prove that this season can be saved first. Let's just be real honest here. 4 of the next 5 games for the Galaxy are on the road. And then they have an El Trafico at the Rose Bowl. That's going to be fun, right? And then they play Philadelphia at home. So they've got 1 home game against Sporting Kansas City and 6 gauntlets. This is a team that has scored 1 goal on the road all season long.
Shocking. Wow.
And now they're just going to figure it all out, right? I mean, for me, the title of this was, "Is this the beginning of the end of the Chris Klein era?" I mean, can you say this season can be saved? I mean, me and Alex, we don't like sensationalize this stuff. We don't. That's one thing we're very careful about. We don't say something until it's going to happen. And
Sure.
right now with this team, where's the proof in the pudding, to use an English expression?
So let me say something, because you guys were there. You remember, and I was just talking to Rob on his show. Yeah, and because the guys there have this, one is Vanny's had enough chances now. It's more than that, and the other is the players. And as you guys know, on our show with Arsenal, Kevin and I always argue. Kevin's like, it's the players. And I'm like, well, the manager has to be culpable as well. It can't always just be on the players, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a team, and I'm going to give, and I say this with very little kind of compliment,
Okay.
that Chris Klein and Greg did pull a roster together towards the end of last season that clicked into gear and went on a run. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for a dodgy defensive a dodgy defensive clearance and giving them the corner in the depths of, extra time, they could have won that game. They were very close to winning that game. What has happened between the end of last season, those 10 games, to the 14 games that we've seen so far this season? 2 wins. This is horrific. This is embarrassing. This is unacceptable. I don't care what's going on behind the scenes. You're the manager. You're the players. You've got to figure it out. With that said, how is it this team almost beat LAFC in the playoffs last season, and now we're here? Was it a mistake? We ripped Cabral to pieces, but was he actually better for the roster? Grandsir, I mean, losing him, he was really great in that last run-in, wasn't he? They've plugged and played, but it's not copy and paste. I don't think some of the new players who come in are good enough. I don't think the recruitment's been good enough. Mm-hmm. And I would love to know what you guys think, but the juxtaposition between the last 10 game LA Galaxy of last season to the first 14 of this, I know they've lost players and they've replaced, but my goodness, the fall off the cliff is massive.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to that. For being honest, if it wasn't for those run of games, like the Vanny era in LA Galaxy has been extremely disappointing, for gonna be honest. His performances in 2021, missing out the playoffs, team was extremely inconsistent. 2022, again, the same thing where they're very inconsistent in their play, a lot of highs and also a lot of lows. And that run of form was what set the expectation for the Galaxy being, in the upper echelon of the Western Conference, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, if we acknowledge that they did lose a lot of players, they made some movement, and obviously the players that they brought in are still kind of gelling in a way. They're obviously not going to be as accustomed to Vanny, who was with those players for 2 years almost. So I'm not going to be here and like defend Greg Vanny and say like, oh, it's not his fault. But at the same time, you got to acknowledge that he hasn't necessarily put a solid foundation, I would say, in winning results if you take away that run of games. And I think again, you're kind of seeing that um, this season with
Mm-hmm.
this current start to the
And
season, which
Alex,
is the
it's his
West.
team. It's his team, right? This is
Mhm.
his team, guys. This is his
Well,
team.
the Galaxy were very imbalanced for most of 2022, and then guess what happened that saved their butts? They were able to bring in Brugman and Ricky Puig during the summer
Mm-hmm.
transfer window, the same
Mhm.
one that they're gonna not be able to use, that every other team in the league is gonna be able to use to their advantage. So, by definition, the Galaxy are going to be a weaker squad in the summer than every other team in the league, and so. That and the fact that Ricky Puig came into the league and he wasn't scouted. Teams didn't have a chance to game plan against him. You had Brugman coming to the team, and the Galaxy had this like midfield that was just amazing. And typically in MLS, when your attack is good, you've got about like between 10 or 12 games before teams make an adjustment. It was right towards the end of the year. There was no adjustment period. Again, they were really good. They should have for a second there, they could have beaten LAFC. I mean, we're on the other side of the fence. Trundalo, the boys, they bring that game up all the time, as specifically the game that when they won, they knew they could win MLS Cup. So it was a really big deal for them too.
Yeah, that game was so much bigger than I think people even realize. Maybe I don't know. I think if you're in Southern California, you realize how big that game is. But the trajectory of what that means, the LAFC beat their rival, beat the five-star team to make it to MLS Cup, which, by the way, I don't care what anyone says. I know the Premier League and Bundesliga have been amazing this season. That game is one of the best games I've ever seen, period, live anywhere. That final was outrageous. It had everything. But LAFC delivered. And the other thing, too, guys, LAFC are delivering on all of the coolness. Young people want to belong to something that they can relate to. Young fans want to support a team that is, like minded in some ways. It's the same with Manchester City right now. Yeah, they're winning, but young fans are gravitating to them.
Mhm.
There's a way they market, there's a way they speak to fans, there's all of these things. LA Galaxy, when I arrived here all those years ago, they were the cool kids in town. And my goodness, you talk about a franchise falling from grace. This has to be one of the most in American sports. It's because it's football that it's not being written about enough. If this was, in NFL, in NBA, it would be everywhere all the time, every day. I mean, this is a massive fall from grace for a team that has absolutely been dominant and had some of the biggest superstars come and play here. Shocking.
I think it's worse
You're
too,
so
considering.
right because there is I mean, I've noticed it. There's a generational gap between these two teams. When you're just
Mhm.
walking the concourses. I mean, our good friend Chandrima, one thing she
I
noticed
love
is,
her,
yeah, she's amazing and an Arsenal fan. So, I mean,
my Guna, my fellow Guna girl.
oh yeah, can't, we had her on last episode. She was amazing. She pointed out to me, and this makes a lot of sense. When you go to not Galaxy, when you go to Laker games, when you go to Rams games, when you go to like these big time events, there's almost like this Las Vegas vibe when you're walking around because like, all the big people, all the people that want to be seen, it's like it's Hollywood, right? LAFC has captured that Hollywood vibe. When you go
Yep.
to games, I mean, it's almost like a double-edged sword for me because I've been to the Sunset Lounge or whatever after games. I'm like, I don't want to be here. Everyone's trying too hard to be cool, man. There's too much Gucci around here. I don't like this. Back in the press box with the nerds, but they've really captured something there, and that something that's just underrated. But that downtown stadium, it's beautiful. There's been
All of it, Mike. You're bang on. Everything they're doing is appealing. Everything, and they've done it since day one. And whether you like LAFC or not, you cannot deny they're one of the best at marketing their club in all of MLS. And I would say in sports, they do. Even their emails are cool. I'm sorry, they just are. Their emails are cool.
Everything about that. Like at the last game, like me and Alex were sitting there, like chomping away at like snacks, like we're at a movie theater. I had a thing of gummy bears that was probably bigger than my El Trafico like license plate, and then it's like, what am I doing? Like, I'm surprised that the fountains don't squirt out like soda or something. I mean, well, maybe.
I mean, but the thing is they've mastered it, and and let's be honest, let's be fair, they've done it. And really, the only Galactico they've signed is Gareth Bale. And LAFC fans may not want to hear this, but sorry, Carlos Vela was not a Galactico when he signed for you. He just wasn't. He was having a really good career in Europe. He had great moments for my club, Arsenal, and he's still beloved there. There's no doubt about that. And he was just a really lovely, beautiful player to watch in Europe. He's come here and he's dominated. He's delivered. He's dominated. He's been consistent. He's absolutely been worth every single penny they've paid for. He's put the team on the map. And through his success in Europe, they've been able to market the club as well on an international level. They are doing things that Nashville are copying, St. Louis are copying, Austin are copying. They all want to be as cool as LAFC. And right now, they're the team to be. And LA Galaxy are a gazillion galaxies far away from the noisy neighbors who are now the winning neighbors.
Well,
yeah, I think something that was so interesting today, ESPN had an article where they mentioned, is this even a real club when talking about the LA Galaxy or something along the lines of
That's
that.
just really sad.
Yeah, and again,
you want me to read it? Because I got it. Here.
Oh, yeah, you can read it.
Vanny, who tried in vain to have a discussion. Wait. That's the problem with these notes sometimes. ESPN Power Rankings dead last. Their latest loss at home to Charlotte ended with a few supporters who broke the organized boycott screaming at players and manager Greg Vanny. I screwed it up again. Who tried in vain to have a discussion with them. Then Vanny had to sit at the podium and take the heat at the press conference while under fire team president Chris Klein stood and watched. Meanwhile, AEG's ownership hasn't said or done anything to indicate that they remember they own the Galaxy. This is not a serious club.
Yeah, again, it's not just the people in LA are noticing this. I mean, everybody across Major League Soccer and who follows this league sees what's going on with the Galaxy. And it's no doubt that over the past couple of years, with the rise of LAFC and them winning MLS Cup and could possibly win Champions League, it's just feels like right now the Galaxy is under pressure on so many different fronts. And when you're like that, and with the current form of the team, I just don't see this season being salvageable in any capacity.
Well, Sophie, just to answer your question earlier about Galacticos, Galacticos are yesterday's news. I mean, fans are smart. They're educated. They want to see good players. They don't need to see some guy who was on a list.
No, but when a few years ago, MLS needed Galacticos, they needed the big players. They did. There's no doubt about it. Now, yes, because the managers are smart, players deserve a lot more credit. The league deserves a lot more credit. The quality of the league has improved. You don't need those, A++ superstars coming into the league for it to be fun and engaging. However, we know, unfortunately for LA Galaxy, LAFC haven't had to do it because they've built their foundation on something different. They didn't build their foundation on signing superstars. Unfortunately, LA Galaxy did, and I was there day one, David Beckham, and that is part of the Hollywood story for LA Galaxy. So, I mean, you can't tell me, though, that this roster, this team, are that bad. Are you telling me a team that has the midfield you talk about, especially with Ricky Puig, I just don't believe for a second they're as bad as this.
They're not bad. They're incomplete. I mean, we were just talking earlier about how for this team just to function efficiently, Ricky Puig has to just consistently ball out every single game. He's got to dribble past 3 or 4 players. He's got to score bangers from outside the 18. Like, all this has to happen just for the system to run efficiently. It's not a good system. And if you add a few more wings,
what's the plan B, Mike? Does he have a plan B?
I mean, I asked Greg about that.
I think they underestimated, man, I really do think they underestimated what Cabral and Grandsir. Everything but the final product. Everything but the final product. You were missing one thing, and now you chopped and changed a bunch of things, and all of a sudden you have absolutely no width. You have no way of stretching the defense whatsoever, and that's where 100% where Vanny's comments about precision comes from, because when you have no pace, everything's got to be perfect, inch perfect, and it's getting to the point where it's getting ridiculous because, I mean, Boyd's the only guy who can provide width, and if you have a system like that, how are you going to...
But they're his players, Mike. This is his team. Alex, Mike, this is his team. This is his squad. He, as a manager, if plan A isn't working, what is his plan B with these players?
Yeah, exactly. And I asked Greg after the game, do you feel like changing tactics? Does there need to be more change in the team? And he said he's just going to stay with what they have so far, because if they change, it's going to confuse the hell out of people. And, obviously, in my opinion, I always believe that a manager should always have a different system or a different formation to work in, something else that provides something different. And I've always been a big advocate of the 3-5-2. I think that's the perfect formation for the LA Galaxy and the current roster that they have, because their wingers are not consistent. They're not lethal players in the final third. I think their fullbacks have tons of potential, and I think you should take advantage of that. But again, I think right now at this point, Vanny's kind of...
He's run out of ideas. It feels like he's running out of ideas.
Yeah, it does in a way. Obviously, he's tried very hard to make Memo Rodriguez a winger when he is not. He is a central midfielder, and I think we've seen that when he's played at that position. Tyler Boyd, again, I mean, they tried getting other wingers, but this is the best guy that they could get. And no disrespect to Tyler Boyd. He's done everything he can, and he's been one of the better players in the attacking
really
third.
Put in the effort,
but
hasn't
he's, just not shown that quality to be a consistent player, to be the guy, because you need somebody to be the guy in the final third when Chicharito is regressing every single game. And this squad, again, just is so incomplete. And right now, I just feel like, without the summer transfer window, it just feels like there's more despair in aura, that kind of feeling of despair for me when I look at the future of this team and their season.
Why does he insist on playing Chicharito and not give Dayan a chance?
It seems that...
I know that Dayan hasn't exactly been firing on all cylinders when he's been given the chance. However, it seems to me, and I love Javier. I mean, he's really super raw and honest in pressers, and he's really always standing up in front of everyone and saying, hey, hands up. But I don't know, why is it like, just bench him, play Dayan.
Well, any manager can collect a paycheck and have a game plan and then, dissect their game plan when it doesn't work out, right? Where Vanny goes from being just a smart guy and an intelligent dude to being just an elite manager is that he's got to figure out solutions to some of these complex problems. Now, the whole thing coming into this year, probably the number one question was, all right, how do you keep Chicharito banging in the goals? How do you get Dayan more involved? And he hasn't been able to prove that he can score from a starting position. But we've seen what he can do with Serbia. We've seen how dangerous he is in other situations. At what point does it become about Vanny not utilizing Dayon the right way. Because again, I do think that he's dropped off a little bit. He's regressed, and for me, it does get to a point where it is a
Well,
coaching problem.
let me spin it back to you guys.
Sure.
With 14 games in the season, regardless of what's happening in the background, right? And I do compare it to my team because we went through a major transition where you had to implode a club really and remove players sometimes for free in order to get to the point where you want to be as a team. Are you telling me that, sorry, the Chris Klein situation is the reason why the team has only won 2 games so far this season? I think that's being used as a crutch. I think it's being used as an excuse. And I think you have to start asking questions about the manager, about what he's doing, who he's picking, his formations, his tactics, whether or not he has the ability in in-game management to change things. This is a manager who won a championship. This isn't a manager who's just like chomp change here. This is a guy who's played at the highest level and won a championship. So what is going wrong? You have to ask questions about the dressing room and the manager at this point. I just don't see how you can't. What does this have to do with Chris Klein?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is just sort of a non sequitur in a way, but I didn't like Columbus. You know, you had Zavaleta donning the captain's armband. Might not have seemed like a big deal at the time. You know, I had a private conversation with someone, they were kind of reiterating the same thing to me. Look, when you have a locker room that is anything less than just perfect and just everyone's getting along, you don't introduce situations that could become bigger or become more complicated. Now, you have all these players on the Galaxy, especially with the center back position. You have Mavinga, who was signed. He played about 2 games, and then, you know, he's basically going to be a backup for the rest of the year because of Jalen Neal, right?
He's not good enough. He's just
He isn't. But like, and that's you know, we can just point. That's one where we can point to Vanny and say, hey, he signed one of his guys. He didn't work out, and then, you know, and again, we don't sensationalize stuff. When the Mavinga thing happened on social media where he was complaining, we said it wasn't really a big deal, right? But the Zavaleta thing, it was just. There's this story in the Athletic about Toronto. Did you hear about how Bernadeschi and the drama with him and the TFC players? And, you know, one of the big things is there was a bust up, and Bernadeschi and Bradley were talking, and then like Michael Bradley, his son, who by the way is the captain of TFC, he said something, and then he said, "Oh, well, that's just because you're Bradley's son or whatever." And I guess the point is when you have a locker room full of egos, right? Like, it's not good to create situations that can get worse. And again, like, it's not an outright
you have
criticism.
two Bradleys in one dressing room, there's going to be fire, that's for sure. Sorry, had to go there.
Dude, yeah, I mean, like, it's just but having the situation with Bradley where he's got his son playing, who, by the way, is getting up there in age, right? So maybe some of his teammates are wondering, like, oh, is this guy playing because he's the best person for the position, or is it because of the kid's son? And then when you throw on him getting this captain's armband, you're creating a lot of pressure on Michael Bradley, right? And that's the same thing. When you have this situation where you've got this locker room where things could potentially be unraveling, you've got, like, you know, Douglas Costa probably doing whatever the hell he's doing. I have no idea what he's doing, but it's just.
So what you're saying is, do you feel like Greg's lost the dressing room?
I don't think that he's lost
do you
the
guys
dressing
feel
room,
that
but
way?
I mean, for me, I'll say when we talked to Delgado after the game, he definitely mentioned that some people need to put their egos aside, kind of really be bought into what's going on. And I've heard whispers of there being a little bit of some relationships not really being as close as they seem. I've heard kind of whispers of that from people, but I think right now this team just doesn't seem very unified. And I think sure they can go out to the press and kind of say they are, but internally and on the pitch, it doesn't look like that. And when you look at the behavior of some of the players, the way that they kind of talk to each other, the way they kind of interact with one another when they're kind of down and when it's not working, you can kind of see that there is some tension there. And I think right now we haven't really seen that unleashed, but I can tell you from what I've heard, there's definitely not as close of a knit group as they may seem.
And it feels that way, and I don't know. It just it feels a little broken, and I thought it was really off that Delgado had to come out first and face the media after that match the other night. I don't
Yeah,
care what you're doing or how long the media has to wait for the coach, but don't throw players out like that. It's happened. You don't do that. That's not right.
I'd almost
mhm.
prefer that they just don't speak to us at all. But
Yes. But then fans will be like, they'll say cowards, they're not showing themselves. But for him to come out first after such a disappointing match, and then for him to have to be the first to answer to what happened with the fans as at the end of the game. Unacceptable to put your player in that position. Unacceptable.
agreed. I
This has
mean,
to stop. Like, these Galaxy players are, they have to perform better. They do. But my goodness, it's really hard to go into work every day where there is a terrible atmosphere, a terrible culture, and you are expected to perform, and deliver because you earn X amount of money, or you're a DP, or you're this, or you're that.
and
It's
you know
just hard.
what's really depressing is that like everyone knows it. It's not some sort of like secret. Everybody knows what's going on, and this was something I was going to ask both of you guys. But when we go to the games and we're in the stands, doesn't it feel like the soul's been sucked out of the club a little bit,
Oof.
and it just permeates to just every corner of the stadium, including the fans?
I said to a few people the last time I was there, and I say to people when I see them, I find it depressing and sad. And, that's because I've covered LA Galaxy now since 2010, I
Whoa.
think.
So,
Um,
so
I
wow.
was there for when Beckham arrived, but got super into covering them for Talksport around that time. And I've seen the best of it. Oof, I've seen the best of it. 11-12. Holy crap. I mean, the best of this team. The vibe, the dressing room, the players, the ballers. You're talking about recruitment. Not only the stars like Beckham and Keane, and Landon was there, but the supporting cast around those players at the time, they were ballers. They went into the locker room. They knew what their role was, but they were players who were willing to put everything on the line. This roster is not full of those players. They are just not. And you know what? I feel for Chicharito because I know he's in poor form, but he's desperately trying every game. And you know what? It's gotten to the point where he's trying so hard, it's too hard because he wants so badly to fix everything. And I feel like the people around them are just completely disappointing them and letting them down in every way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we were saying earlier about how he's trying to will the ball into the net at times, and you know,
It's
I
sad.
don't think
It's
these are
it's
bad
sad.
players. I don't think that they're like bad dudes. But I mean, I'll tell you what. Like Ricky Pooch. I posted a tweet just about you can get 24-hour tickets, 24 buck tickets for 24 hours, and 9 out of 10 Galaxy fans just kind of laughed at it. And then I noticed I got a like, and then who was it? None other than Ricky Pooch. I see Ricky. He's constantly marketing the team on game day. I see him trying. I see Chicharito trying. Like, Sophie, I don't think that they're that far off if they had like, we've said it before. Who's the strong man? Who's the tough guy? Who's the enforcer? They're missing an enforcer. I don't think they're missing guys with heart. We've talked about how this team gets way too emotional, right? It was Derek Williams last year, but this year, I mean, you saw the
Hmm.
team basically blew the El Trafico because Raheem, he basically just does the throw in just randomly, and then it's PK all of a sudden. And you've got some good guys, but Larry Bird of all people. I'm going to go to the NBA, but Larry Bird of all people, he spoke about how valuable it was to have just a team just full of personalities. You got to have like a quiet guy. You got to have a loud guy. You got to have a crazy guy. You got to have a throw things in the locker room when things aren't good at halftime guy. You got to have a composed guy. Like you can't just have a bunch of nice guys or a bunch of emotional guys. And whatever the mix is, however way you slice it, it's not a good mix. So you're right.
Right.
I will add that I think the one thing this team is really missing and that they've been kind of coddled with and lucky to have the last 2 years is that veteran leadership and presence of Sasha Kljestan and Victor Vasquez.
Well
I think
said.
having
Bosh.
the loss of those guys has been monumental because, while I do think Chicharito is a good leader, the full burden is now on him to be that guy. And let's be honest, with kind of all that going on, you have the supporters boycotting at the start of the season and a lot of unknowns at the start of the season. It feels like this team in a way just wasn't strong enough mentally, and that's translated on the pitch if you look at the recent performances. And I think, you always kind of, it's so hard to really value those guys because, a lot of people will say, oh, they're old, they don't deserve to be on the team. But what they bring to the locker room, they bring that foundation and a bit more of that stability. And losing both of those guys in the same offseason, which is huge.
And Alex, every team, right, a manager builds a team in his image, his personality. Bruce Arena did that. Cherondolo is doing that. You go to the Atlanta United side that won MLS Cup. These teams are a mirror image of their coach. And I think, as much as I like Greg, and I think Greg is super talented and super smart, I don't think I've ever, in the 3 years, seen a team in his image, right? You can go to, look, Pep Guardiola, teams in his image, Antonio Conte, Jurgen Klopp, Mikel Arteta even this season has built a team in his image. This is who I am. This is who I want my team to be. This is how I want them to represent the club on the pitch. And I just, even in one season, Austin FC took on the image and the vibe of the coach, the culture of the city, everything. But it all has to start with the manager and building that team in his image. Is he a fighter? Is he a tactician? Is he a long ball merchant? Is he a tiki-taka? Is he aggressive? Is he full of shithousery? Does he like the dark arts? Like, what is the identity of this team? Who are they? And who's behind them? And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Vanny, he's a very astute, just very he's a very technical guy. He's very bright. Is he a motivator? Is he a guy that's gonna get on the locker room in halftime and motivate?
How did he win a championship in Toronto? How did he do that? Was it just Javinko? Was it? No.
No.
There's no way you win a championship with one player, right?
I mean, there were so many important role players like Azorio and let's see.
He
Delgado.
had to. Delgado, yeah. And that's the thing. Like when you look at LA Galaxy's midfield, come on, man, that's a good midfield. Those three.
Who was it that said, well, you don't win games if your midfield, you win them with your starting 11? And I think that was a reference to LAFC or something. But it doesn't help that the team's rest defense is terrible. I mean, maybe we can jump into the preview for RSL before we kick out of here because, the Galaxy are actually, I know, I'm struggling to even have the motivation to have enthusiasm for this preview because, I mean, the Galaxy have scored one goal on the road all season long. So you tell me, Sophie, is it really worth it to spend 2 hours just watching the replay of the last RSL game to come up with some sort of tactical scheme for how things are supposed to work? Dude, the fact of the matter is, forget tactics. What's Greg going to do different for this game just to give his squad hope that they can just get any sort of result? And for both of you guys.
So I don't think he's going to do anything different. I think what Greg hopes is different is the mental part of it because he's going to play the way he plays all the time. And that is the biggest issue for this team. But to give Greg the benefit of the doubt, does he have the players to play the way he wants? Maybe not, but dude, that's on you. These are your players. You recruited this team. So I always believe that good form has to start somewhere. Luck has to start somewhere. Is it going to start in Salt Lake? I don't think so. But
maybe there's the Open Cup game. Maybe if RSL plays a bunch of kids, then Galaxy might win. But other than that,
yeah. Also, I'm sorry, but I thought what Ricky did the other night was embarrassing.
Yeah.
You should not be doing that against LAFC's backup team.
So do you agree with Chiellini then? Calling him a clown after?
Yeah, I thought that was clown behavior. Sorry, Chiellini's like he's a legend of the game. Ricky, dude, you do that in a US Open Cup game against LAFC's backup team, and then you end up losing 1-0 to Charlotte. I'm sorry, that is clown behavior. You should not be doing that when you are down and out, like on the canvas.
This is a good example of what we're talking about how you can have energy, and sometimes you can have like so much energy, but is it positive energy or negative energy? And Sophie, I do agree with you. It doesn't matter that he afterwards, he basically described it as the 3-2-5-2 and that they were disrespectful and that those are the ones that he was targeting with the celebration. You're right. It's a freaking U.S. Open Cup, and I tell you what, Sophie. What do you think's going to happen if LAFC wipes the floor with the Galaxy at the Rose Bowl? Do you think that? What do you think happens if Bouanga does the same thing? You think that would be a good way of getting back at him? Because I tell you what,
I think they're going to be so ready and so triggered. Like in Rocky, where Clubber Lang has the picture of Rocky, and every time he trains, he goes to brush his teeth or whatever it is, he's like, you just see that dude. I want to smash his face in. And unfortunately, they have dangled the carrot, and LAFC will bite, and they're the better team. However, I always say in a derby, form goes out the window. Everything goes out the window, and anything can happen. But they have given them good. Not that they need any ammo to kind of get up for the game in any way, shape, or form, because it's a derby and both teams want to batter each other. But that was not a smart move at all. They'll Chirondolo will have that on tape right before the match.
They're going to have that picture posted all over their training ground for motivation. But yeah, on the RSL game, I will say one of my things I will be paying attention to, because obviously Chicharito got a red card. Dejan Joveljic, I mean, we've been wanting this guy to take the next step to be a starter, and we've mentioned it before. He just really hasn't been the starting guy. Again, this team only has 3 wins, 15 losses, and 4 draws when he starts. So winning, I guess he hasn't been winning when he starts with the team. So I kind of want to see how he does out there, given that he has the liberty to go out there and start the game. We've said it again. Chicharito, I think, is just regressing every game. He's not the same player he was 12 months ago. And I think right now we need to see some sort of spark in there. And Joveljic is a fiery guy. He's a guy that, is very emotional, will get up for the moment, and will definitely, do everything in his power to help the Galaxy. And I think if there's a time where you need that, it's now. And you need him to be a guy who can be a winning player, can lead a winning team. And he hasn't been able to do that when he's given the opportunity to lead the line. So for me, that's kind of what I'm paying attention to in this RSL game.
I don't use the sound effects very often, but I feel like we need to for Sophie's sake, because my God, I only asked for 15 minutes and it's 7:30. We've been talking for 45
wow, really?
So we need to give you a nice round of applause.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation and talking to you guys. I know a lot of LA Galaxy fans. I see them at the stadium. I talk to them online when I do Josh's show, and they deserve better than this. I've been there as a fan of a club that has been invincible, won everything, and fallen from grace. And let me tell you that there is hope and that you will be back. But it takes bravery to make that happen. And until this era is cleansed and LA Galaxy 2.0 can be born, this is going to be the ticket that you buy, and you'll watch this over and over again. And I really believe that they have to clean house in order to move on.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome back on the show anytime. You're so intelligent. You bring an emotional. Oh wait, what was the word I was gonna? I had such a good thing to describe. Hope I don't ruin it at the end. But oh no, I'm forgetting. Oh crap. Well, I ruined it right at the end. We'll cut this.
Nah, you never ruined it. No, I mean sometimes you can talk tactics all you want all day long, but when it's broken behind the scenes, it's not going to be fixed. It's just not. And something is fundamentally broken. I've had days where I've walked into this club covering them where people are bouncing off the walls. You can feel the happiness while you're parking your car. And now there's just this massive cloud over the club. And whether people inside the club go in happy to work every day and they're like, you know what, eventually it will turn and we'll move on and we'll move forward. This is much bigger, and people need to make some brave, bold decisions. And I will be listening to Josh's show because I wish there's the type of, they need to give the fans answers, and they cannot continue in this way. They can't operate under this cloud. It's never going to change, and the fans deserve better. And I'll leave you with that.
You bring emotional gravity and clarity. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. So,
well, thank you for having me, Alex. Take care. Love you guys, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yep, we're out of here. Take it easy, everyone. We'll see you soon, and have a good night.